So, as we're waiting for more people to join, welcome to episode 15 of PhotogTV. My name is Dustin Meyer, and this is our weekly show where we talk about photography and have special guests and do live demonstrations. And today, our co-host Eric Doggett is on the road, and hopefully he will be joining in with us some point today. I'll have to remember to send him the invite as well, so that way he can jump in while he can. Basically, we have one thing we always do is we start with news, but we have a special guest today, Scott Detweiler. So say hi, Scott.
Hi, Scott. Somebody had to do that, right?
Somebody had to. So while this is going on, I'm going to double check and make sure that we are going, and it looks like we are now live on the website here. And Scott, if you would do me a favor and just jump over to Photog.tv and see if the feed is coming through on your end, I would appreciate that. I'm going to do the same myself. Probably going to end up seeing a commercial at first. All right. Hey, Christian, how are you?
Hey, Dustin. Good. How are you?
Good, good. We it looks like we're now live on the website, I'm hoping. No, it shows that we are still offline, so it looks like we might be having some upset people here. Let me make sure that we're good to go over here. Something's the matter with our broadcast. This is what happens when Eric goes on mini vacay and leaves me high and dry. Yeah.
Will it mess anything up if I leave early today? I got a baby shoot I got to run to.
Not a problem.
All right.
So let's open preferences. Our poor fans. Like, what is going on? All right, and save. Okay. And are we recording? That's the question of the day. Show control bar. Technical difficulties, everyone. All right. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and keep moving forward with this. Unfortunately, we're not able to record to live stream, but we're going to keep going because we have the on-air feature for Google+. Basically, we always start out with the news section for the day, and so I was just kind of browsing through, and an interesting thing, I know right now everybody's still kind of up in arms about the whole Kodak thing. But something I found on Huffington Post, apparently Kodak is no longer having their name as the Kodak Theater with the Hollywood Theater in Los Angeles, which may be kind of a big downer for some people, but I think it's one of those kind of indicators that it's the end of an era for a very long, successful photography company, making cameras and everything, but I don't know. What do you guys have to think about that, or have to say about that?
No, yeah, it's a shame to see them, go down. But the trends have been going digital for quite a while, and they're digging into that market. I think, and letting go of film wasn't just as aggressive as it was for other people.
I definitely think that it's one of those things where they were kind of late. I mean, they invented the digital camera essentially, but I think that they just, in fact, the first digital camera I ever had was a Kodak. I think it shot 360 pixels wide by 75 pixels high or something like that. But I think once Canon and Nikon kind of got into the game and really professionalized it, Kodak, I feel like they kind of missed the mark in a way. But the next thing I saw was that apparently Kodak is not only going away, but Apple has decided to kind of take it down a notch by going after them with some lawsuits saying that Kodak has infringed upon some of the patents that Apple filed a while back within some of the Kodak printers and digital cameras and digital picture frames, saying that Kodak copied these ideas from Apple. And I don't know, for me it's one of those things where it's like, I feel like Apple's got enough money and Kodak is about to go under anyway, so, you know, are you just trying to prove a point, Apple, or are you, you know, are you really thinking that you're going to get some money out of this? I feel like it's a little bit different. So, hey Todd, how's it going? Let's see, Todd is in the chat room. There we go. All right. So, let's see. Let's see. Yeah, people in the chat room here. Sorry, guys. Having technical difficulties. So, anyways.
Can you give me the... oops, sorry. I went to the PhotogTV site.
Yeah. I mean, for some reason, it's just not showing that we're live.
Yeah.
So.
Well, there's a play button on there now. I don't know if that's meaningful.
Let's see. I don't know.
No.
I'm going to see if I can restart it. This is what happens when I have multiple computers going at once. It's a little too confusing. So while I know. Thank you, Livestream, for all that lovely background music.
Yes. I think I muted everything now. Can't get out of that commercial.
Yeah, that's okay. Okay, well, force quit. All right, so I love that term, force quit. You just kind of imagine like you're willing something to end with your mind like the Jedis. So while that's restarting, what I'd like to do then is go ahead and introduce our special guest. Today we have Scott Detweiler from Milwaukee, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So, Scott, why don't you say who you are, where you're from, and what do you do?
Well, I'm in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I actually run a software company by day. I am a professional photographer off hours, I used to say, for my day job. I do all the design work, the photography here, and then I'm also a SQL developer. But I prefer, obviously, to play with the arts. So the photography is where I get my release from the day job, and get to work with some of the creative folks and so on in the Milwaukee area, in the Chicago area as well, who kind of mingle with each other and so on to create these neat little opportunities.
Very cool. So, how did you kind of segue? I guess. I mean, did you start out as doing the software thing and then eventually segueing into photography, or have they always kind of been hand in hand, or like what kind of got you where you are now?
Your feed is up, by the way, now. I see, but you've got a window in the way.
I got a window. Oh, sweet. Well, hopefully everybody... There we go. Okay. So, sorry everybody who's watching through the website. We finally are up and running. Thank you, Scott, for letting me know. So anyways, for those of you guys that are just now joining us, if you have any questions, I will be monitoring the live chat, as well as the chat stream inside the Google Hangouts. So you can also tweet your questions to me at PhotogTV, but let's keep going. So, so Scott, you've got a really, from the images that I've seen on Google+, you've got a very unique style and flair to where you've come, from and where you're headed towards with your conceptual portraits and design work. What got you into going this route? Like, was there some kind of inspiration, or just something you saw in a magazine once, or why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I started out doing just regular photography for my family, and I had a Pentax PC-10 film camera probably about 20 years ago, and I've been using that forever. and I got invited to go to a group shoot with some models probably about 3 years ago, and I'd never done anything like that before. And it just mostly family stuff, and I was like, well, you know, it sounds kind of interesting. So I went, and it was a 10-hour day, and I must have shot 30 different people, and it was real intensive. I mean, you're constantly rotating through different model and different background, different area, and I don't know. It was intense. It was insane, and I learned, I don't know, like 6 months worth of stuff in a day. I mean, just hit me hard. And after that, I decided to actually kind of start doing those more often. So I go to more and more of those group shoots, and I learn so much each time. And after a while, it started to kind of become. And this is mostly glamour work. So you're doing mostly not like boudoir type photography, but glamour type shots. And after a while, it kind of got to be old. I mean, it's the same thing each time. And it's like, I wish this was a little more interesting. And there were a couple models that were really muses for me that really kind of said, you know, statements that they made with the outfits that they brought, or their expressive posing and things like that. They were like, wow, this would be really great if this were a movie poster kind of thing. And it just kind of started me thinking I should be applying some additional creative post-production in these things to kind of take them to where I think that they should be, or I want them to be, but I can't get them there because I don't have a, you know, space station or what have you laying around, and don't have any sets or anything. So I just shoot on gray most of the time, and then add in post-production what I want to kind of finish the story.
Awesome. I've been getting messages from people saying that the audio wasn't working through the website. I am saying this now, you know, Eric, if you're watching right now, obviously we need you. So, but it looks like we finally got it working. Sorry about that. A lot of what I see, you know, is like working with models. Where do you get your ideas on some of the conceptual artwork that you do? Is it like a collaboration that you have, or is it just something that you come up with on your own?
It's something I come up with on my own. I have a little book, a little Moleskine book that I write down ideas in, and I'll get ideas from numerous sources. I often tease one of my friends who does some design work professionally. You know, I'll see a car driving down the road, and I can't really quite make out what kind of car it is, and it'll look all wild and futuristic, and then when it gets closer, I realize it's just a car pulling a trailer or something wild. I'm like, wow, if I drew what that car looked like in my mind, it would look like this. So oftentimes it's just seeing something in a different way. Sometimes I'm inspired by the wardrobe that a model has. There's some of these situations, I mean, I have my ideas in my book, but when I go to these shoots, you have no idea what you're going to encounter, and maybe I've pre-planned one or two concepts with a model beforehand, but many other models I've never met before, I don't know what they're going to wear, and they'll get there and they're like, hey, you know, do you want to shoot? And I'm like, well, what would I do with that aside from just your standard glamour shot? And get a little more creative on your feet and try and think of something that you could do with it. Now, obviously, I have to have that idea first before I shoot it 99% of the time, because you've got to light it in such a way that I know later on I'm going to add, say, a street light here in this location. The light on the model needs to look like it's coming from that street light. Or in panic situations, you shoot a person and you think, wow, you know, this person's really photogenic, it'd be fun to work with, and you shoot it, and then later on you sit there and you stare at a picture going, wow, this is a really great picture. Now what can I do with it? And those are much harder decisions to make. And sometimes you'll find a picture and it just speaks to you. You pull it up and you go, wow, this really needs to have this type of post-production done to it. I like anything from, you know, creating stuff from photo reference to actually painting it on using ArtRage or Corel Painter. I mean, there's a whole combination of things I could do in post-production to kind of bring whatever image I have in my head to life. As far as inspiration goes, like movies as well, comic books. I don't read a lot of comic books now, but I'll page through some every so often, and I'll get a couple ideas from that. Just basically, they come from anywhere, or just from my mind. You know, from dreams. You wake up. I keep a book next to my bed, so when I wake up and I have a dream, I'll write down, like, maybe there was some cool idea that was in there, and then explore that later on. Then I'll oftentimes throw concepts to models and say, I had this cool idea, and the model will come back and say, well, what if this? Yeah, you do collaborate at times with certain models are good muses and certain models are not. You know, they're just there to look pretty, and that's about it. but I mean, once you get a good one, and you hold on to them because they can be really great, creative people. And then other photographers as well. Do shoots, you'll have other photographers who are, willing to throw in their 2 cents on something, and I love that. I don't know it all, and as soon as you get somebody who knows more than you, who throws something at you, it's like, wow, it's a great gift. Take it and run with it.
Yeah, it's definitely something that a lot of people may not have thought about, collaborating with more than just one photographer, because, we all have different ideas, different inspiration, different viewpoints, and yeah, I mean, it's incredible some of the stuff that you can come up with. So that's really good to hear. So I was kind of hoping we can segue into the next part of the show and have you kind of showcase some of your favorite pieces, and maybe talk a little bit about where your inspiration for them came up, or how you got from point A to point B with the processing part, that kind of thing.
Sure. Well, this image here, can you see that one okay?
Yeah.
Okay. This one is probably my first, I must say, my first true conceptual piece, and it came to me because of the model's hat. This is Valerie, probably one of my favorite models of all time to work with, out of DC, and she comes with this tremendous entourage of wardrobe and costume, and really pleasant person to work with as well. And so the idea here is inspired by the hat, the giant feather that's on the top of it. And this work is probably about 3 years old, maybe 2 years old. The bird and the feathers and everything were obviously added in post-production, but I knew what I wanted when I saw the hat. I'm like, hold your hand out like there's a bird on it, and then I'm like, okay, I'm going to try this and see how it turns out. And it was actually a lot easier than I thought it was going to be, and I think that that's really the secret to this, is try it. I mean, it may seem so impossible to make something look photographically real, but it's really not that difficult. You just give it a whirl, and you'll start out with some mediocre results, but just keep working at it and refining the image until the point where you're happy with it. And this one came together very quickly, and the bird was purchased off of iStock, and just a regular small or medium-sized JPEG, and then I relit it basically by using dodge and burn tools in Photoshop to match the lighting I had on her, and then I set it to cast the shadows using, again, dodge and burn layers, and then added a texture in the background and then some feathers to kind of work in some foreground elements. If I had to do this image again today, I would do it a little bit differently, but I've kind of left it as it is because I think it was, kind of a, I don't want to say I'm sentimental about it, but it was the first one, I'd say, that kind of took me into this new realm. So I've kind of left it alone.
No, nice. I really like how you were able to, take just inspiration from one article off the wardrobe and kind of generate an entire theme around, just that one piece. It's and the matching and stuff, that's far beyond my capabilities as far as the shadow work and additional feathers and stuff like that. I'm always impressed by that kind of thing.
I think one of the biggest things you can do to help yourself, to learning this kind of thing, is painting, actual regular painting. Daniel, I can't even remember his last name, Ibanez, from Colorado, has a digital painting class every Tuesday night as a hangout here on Google+. And I'm learning a lot more about freedom and being free when just working with these things. Just try it, and if it doesn't work, it's okay. That experimentation has really kind of led me down some new roads recently. The biggest problem I have is I didn't, tend to explore my concepts very well. Had I thought ahead when I had Valerie here and I was shooting this picture, I would have shot it in many different ways. And instead, I probably took about 7 pictures, and I knew what I wanted. Once I had the light set up, I took my final images, and I walked away all happy. I should have explored that pose more, or explored the wardrobe or the image more, and that is something I've learned to do a bit better now. But still, I get excited about a picture, and then I kind of forget about, hey, I should be working some other angles, or I should be working some different things, and that has that's one of those things I'm trying to work on.
Nice. Okay. Let's see. What do you have next for us?
Well, I've got just a bunch that I've liked here. This is another one that's Valerie again, from the same day actually. These are more the headshots, but again, trying to be a little more creative with with it, letting the hair be in the face. This looks more like a PlayStation kind of, like something you see Final Fantasy kind of thing when it came out, which I was very happy with. I'm just kind of playing with some of the pictures that I did take from that day. These are more recent. This is Nikki sitting in the middle of a floor. I tend to shoot just on either gray paper or concrete. In this case, this is gray paper. And then obviously lit from the top, because I knew that I was going to be doing something that was going to be kind of fiery or action-oriented. And that's about as far as I took the idea, by the way. I mean, you didn't know, if there was going to be a sky or a burning building or an explosion or whatever it's going to be. I just know that in the end, I like the outfit. It's kind of the post-apocalyptic kind of look, because it's all ripped up, but yet it's sexy. So I'm just going to kind of play with that. And in the end, I thought some of the other things were too aggressive. So this was a nice, subtle theme, but allowed you to focus on the model. So working through the concept and bringing it back to a sane level sometimes is required. I love hair. I have a fixation with it, and my wife is telling me to move on and find something else to be fixated about, but I just really like hair. So this is another Nikki, actually, who, this is probably a combination of about 15 different pictures. There's a yellow fan behind her. Just one of those little, I don't even know what it's called. It's not like a typical fan. It's more like a blower motor, and so it makes a lot of wind for its size. And just had it blowing into her hair and taking a lot of different pictures. Didn't have to worry about the pose being exactly the same. I mean, we're not going to try and just HDR it as some people would do. I'm just taking bits and pieces of the hair and rotating them, working them around, warping them, and so on. And then the flower was added later, because it's like, why is the hair like this? Is she scared? Is there a big vanity behind her? What's going on? And I decided it was kind of the center of the flower almost. So just kind of working with the concept as I'm retouching the picture. And a lot of times that's where the idea comes from, is as you're working through it, you'll find that the picture is speaking to you, that it wants to be something, or you'll have a happy accident. You'll be working with something, all of a sudden you'll apply a blending mode that you didn't expect, and you get something bizarre, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, hey, that's cool. I'm just going to run with that. So it's either, the concept can come to you beforehand or, during the post-production. This is another one of those that was conceived at the time of the shoot. So I knew I was going to have some sort of glyph or something above her hand. So it's a matter of taking the softbox and rotating it so the corner is down. Fairly simple. Those softboxes do rotate, but a lot of people don't think about it. So rotate the corner of the softbox down so it's illuminating her hand a lot stronger, and add the glyph later in the floor. And that's just a simple vanishing point filter. Then I've taken the motion blur and applied a vertical blur to it, and then just masked out the bottom of the blur because I don't want it blurring down into the floor. So it looks like it's glowing. So a lot of fun with these types of concepts. This one is a true conceptual portrait from beginning to end. So the model is a big fan of the movie Splice. Mm-hmm. And in fact, she calls herself Dren. That's her nickname. And she said, if I shave my head, will you shoot this shot? And I said, wow, that's a lot of pressure. She's going to shave off all of her hair, and I'm going to have to take that picture and not screw up. So it was pretty pressure-oriented shot. But basically put her on a mini tramp and shot her jumping up and down until we got a pose that I liked. And from the movie, the girl is a combination of a fish and a bird and a bunch of other stuff. Of course, it ends, well, as you would expect most horror movies do. So kind of doing an underwater type of addition to this in post-production is simple black ink being suspended in water, and then invert it so the black becomes white, and applying it with the blending mode. So very simple post-production. Adding the tail was done in Painter again, just to kind of make it look realistic. I'm not exactly very happy with the tail, and I would probably come back to this image at some point and do it again. But it was fun to do, and she loved it. It was exactly what she wanted, and it turned out very well. But this was a concept that she had to get her head shaved, wait a day or so for the redness to go away, and then we got together and shot it. So I love these types of things.
Talk about commitment, yeah. shaving your head.
Mhm. Again, another hair one. This is for a fashion designer who wanted some shots down of some of her more creative stuff, and you know, it's sexy and full of motion, and added. And now this became more of a piece for artistic and not so much a fashion piece after that, with the adding of the white swooshes and so on to kind of just add some motion. I love photos that have sense of motion or a dynamic tension to them or something. Some glamour shots from time to time as well. This one was taken just a couple of weeks ago with a new model I have met who I really like, fun to work with. This is her first shot ever, our first shoot ever with any photographer, and I think she's an up-and-comer, so I've hooked her up with some modeling agencies that I'm friends with and shoot with. So kind of working through that. I still do some glamour from time to time, but I'm really not inspired by it. This is the same model, actually, but taken from the back. Again, learning to rotate around the concept or the model or the shoot and explore the idea. But this one was taken into Art Rage, which is kind of like Corel Painter, and went nuts with it. Basically, just kind of make it more of a painting slash photo composite. So it's something I like doing, and it's relatively new. This is probably the first one I've ever done. I've done 2 since then. And I kind of like this style. I know it's a completely different direction than what I've done before, but I think that you know, stretching creativity is a good thing. This one was shot on Saturday, this last Saturday. This was an espionage shoot where I basically told models to come wearing things that spies would wear, or think like an alien flux or a fembot, or you know, something along that line. So I actually decided to shoot this one as a selfie. So I got down on the floor, I had the trigger in my hand, and basically the model just did a bunch of poses. I had it all lit so that I could just trigger it remotely from across the room, and just took a bunch of pictures. And then I liked the one of her kissing. I thought that was kind of a femme fatale kind of look to it. So it's kind of a had to get myself in a picture there, I guess. This one's also from Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
New model to me, Andrea, and plan to shoot her a lot more often. Actually, we already have dates set up in the future for shooting some new concepts. But I wanted something sci-fi, and she wore this amazing outfit with all these zippers around it. It's just too cool. I have another one of it here. Hang on a second. From the back. Oh, I guess I didn't have that one in here. It's new on my Google Plus page today, but I just love the outfit. So I added, the background is actually a tire, a piece of vulcanized rubber taken from an extreme angle, and then inverted, and then flipped upon itself. So it's 2 interlocking hoops, basically, and then I blew it out with exposure controls, because it looks like there's something like maybe a tunnel or a tube, and you really can't make out what it is, but it looks futuristic, and that's enough. So it's not that the back to be from anything typical. It can come from anything.
So, quick question: do you find yourself just walking around and just looking for various materials and textures to snap a picture of to use at a later time to like create a library of background images or textures?
Yes, it drives my wife absolutely batty. We'll be looking through, you know, like we'll go on a vacation somewhere. I'll come back and there'll be just a bunch of, well, first of all, an HDR something, and she's like, so there's 7 pictures of something, so she skips past all those. And there'll be a picture of like a wall that's nasty. She's like, what is that? I said, it's a cool texture. She's like, oh. So there'll be like 30 or 40 of those from any specific time. And I'll do, if I see light spilling on a wall in a neat way, I'll take pictures of that. Because I know later on, the application of that image may not look like that image at all, like this tire. I mean, it doesn't look like a tire at all. It's just a piece of rubber. It's actually a picture from, I'll see if I can find the picture for you here. It's from the Milwaukee Museum. It's just a picture of a piece of tire art, I should say. I don't know that it's that important to show, but it might be kind of fun to look at here. Actually, I'll come back to it here.
Okay.
I got a couple more if you want to look at these.
Yeah, definitely. These are incredible.
This one took me about 50 minutes or so to light in order for me to get the lighting the way that I wanted. It's a Paul Buff 22-inch white BD dish, just out of frame directly over the model, and with a 30-degree grid on the front of it, and just blasting straight down. And then camera left is a speed light, a Nikon SB800 speed light with a blue gel on it to kind of add a little interest to the motorcycle. And then the the ugly garage we were in was taken out with the pen tool around the bike, and then I added the cityscape in behind, and then obviously made the tones for the city match the blue and the chrome for the bike. So very simple put together. It didn't take me very long. It probably took me a half an hour to composite the image, or it took me over an hour to actually shoot it. So I guess that's kind of the right order of things.
Do you find yourself getting work for, like you'd said that you'd done work for like the fashion designer, do you find yourself utilizing more of your techniques with your compositing and stuff for commercial work now than you did before because of your personal experimentation with it?
Well, I don't know. It's a balance of both. I mean, most of the jobs that I get are going to be just strictly photography related, and they're not really interested in the post-production techniques at all. However, I have been given jobs where I will have a magazine will approach me and say, this was shot by another photographer, and it's either blown out in some areas and they don't know how to recover that. I mean, even outside of RAW, there are ways to recover, or I should say fake in data that wasn't there before in Photoshop. And I've been hired a couple times to do that, but most of the time it's just to shoot the pictures, straight out of the camera. And I'm one of those people that I will try and perfect it out of the camera. I'm not going to try and say, well, I'll just use Photoshop on that later. That's just time that isn't well spent. If I can just move a light or reflect a light differently or shoot from a different angle or move that distracting element out of the way, I'd rather do that than I would do it in Photoshop any day. I think there's too many people who say, like, I'll just fix it later in Photoshop. I'm not one of those people. I'd rather use the Photoshop for the fun part and not the fixing of something I should have shot correctly the first time. Someone in the chat room asked if I rely on any masking or third-party plugins. I actually don't use any plugins at all. I'm kind of a Photoshop purist. I do own the Topaz set. I won it from a photography contest. I really don't use it very often. The only plugin I should say that I like that I have used in the past is Alien Skin makes a bokeh tool, Bokeh 2. I like that tool. It's fun to play with when I want to introduce something unique to a texture that isn't there, or I'll just shoot bokeh myself. But sometimes that's the tool I would reach for if I ever have anything, and it's rare. So I don't really use any plugins at all. This is straight out of the camera. This is an umbrella being held by another person who is. This is a tribal shoot where everyone was dressed in like tribal gear and whatever. Yeah, so that's about it.
Where was that last one? Where was that taken?
This is a Sherwood Forest, believe it or not. That's what it's called here in Wisconsin. It's a state park just off of Lake Michigan. And so, I think it's Lake Michigan.
It's a big
lake. It was fun. Yeah, it was a neat. I take that back. I think I did add the sky in this shot. I think the sky was added after the fact because the sky was a bit on the boring side. So I just added a little bit more interest around the edges, but not to detract from that, from the model. So yeah, those are pretty much the examples I kind of picked here. I'm always posting more to my wall as I do them, and I do Photoshop Hangouts. A lot of these images I retouch actually live in a Hangout on Google+. So as I think I want to work on something for the day, I will I'll bring it up and start working on it in a Hangout.
Nice. Yeah. So is there like a certain day of the week, or is it just whenever you just get the itch to go ahead and start working on an image, you just open up a Hangout?
Yeah, it's pretty much whenever I get the itch to do it. I don't have any scheduled time of day when I do that kind of thing over another. It's basically if I've shot recently and I know that I need to get those retouched, that I'll go ahead and take the time to do so.
So if you hear that, folks, you have to start stalking Scott if you want to get in on these tutorials. Okay, well, I want to go ahead and open it up for questions. For those of you that are in the chat room over there on the website, or if you're here in the Hangout, feel free to ask any questions. Anybody? Any brave souls out there? Let's see. And if your mic was muted in the Hangout, you can unmute it. So, see, it looks like Ernesto's coming up with something.
I'm going to restart my webcam here. For some reason it's not.
I'm going to say, let's switch back. I mean, that picture is very beautiful, but, you know, we'd rather see your face.
Yeah, I'm trying to get that to work here.
Oh, good question, Ernesto. Ernesto's asking, do you have any books out there that you've written?
Then I should hopefully have it done. It's one of those things. Oh, there we go. It's one of those things I've been working on for a long time, and I argue with myself on what I want to include. So I wanted to come up with an idea for a book that was lighting, posing, as well as post-production. So I have a lot of books that are lighting only, or a lot of books that are posing only, or Photoshop books. And I'm like, well, I think that if I were to distill down what I know into the bare essence, I could come up with a book that was those three things, lightheartedly written, because I write like I talk, so a lot of people are like, well, that's not very professional. I'm like, well, that's me, you know. But I think you can still learn from it. So trying to get those done. But I want to have a good variety of chapters, but I also want to talk about how I lit it, why I lit it that way. I'm including lighting diagrams. You know, I'm kind of trying to do as much as I can. And it'll have probably 8 to 10 different pictures that I basically reverse engineer. This is how I shot it. This is how it was laid out. This is how the model was posed, why I posed the model that way. And this is the step-by-step post-production on what I did. And it'll be sold through Trey Ratcliffe's group. So I should hope to have it done here in the next week or two to go to final editing, and then out, I'd say, hopefully by middle of next month. So it'll be probably a $10 book, a $10 ebook. That'll be hopefully propagated well.
And where will people be able to find it? Through the iTunes bookstore or Amazon?
I'm not sure where they market it. I will have a link to it on my site, and I'm sure Trey will have some out there as well, and I'll put it here on Google+, and it'll be all over the place. I do have a website that I'm probably not going to keep up for much longer, so I'm not really writing for it anymore, but it used to be where I posted all of my before and after pictures, as well as a step-by-step process of how I got there. And for those that are interested in seeing it, it's probably not going to be up so much longer, so I'm not really writing for it, but I'm just leaving it there. It's lightShootEdit.com. It's been up for probably about 3 or 4 years, and now obviously Kelby is a Light Shoot Retouch, and I feel it's kind of too close to the name that he has, so I'm kind of discontinuing using that. But you know, check that out. That's got a lot of before and afters and step-by-step on how I got there. But that'll be coming down, and then everything else is basically going to be on my regular website.
Let's see here. Another question we got here is, looks like from Ron. He's saying, so you shoot and then composite. So, yeah, I mean, basically it looks like, I don't know if the feed is, but yeah, I mean, basically from what we've been able to see, it looks like you come up with the concept, and then you shoot it, and then do you pre-plan ahead of time what you're going to composite behind it, or is it just you kind of go back into your library and see what you have?
Usually it's the first. I will actually take time to sketch out my bigger operations. You know, if I have a really complex scene that I need to make, I need to find what I'm going to composite it against first. That'll include, normally when I sketch out, I'll sketch out my rough tones, I'll sketch out the idea of where my light is coming from, so the shadows that are being cast. So when I shoot the model, I have the light in an area where I know what it's going to look like when it's done. And then I just composite in the background on the objects that will form the scene. And it's oftentimes many different objects. It's not just one thing. I do have a fixation on textures. So if I have a shot that I really love, but I'm not really sure what I want to composite with it, I'll put a texture behind it and release it and say that one's done. Because the models also want their pictures back very quickly. But 1 or 2 of these I'll save behind, and I know it's going to be a big 20 or 30 plus hour operation to get that done. And I have a life, I have a family, and so I work late at night when everybody's in bed. I'll be up here hanging out and adding in these different elements. And we've done some pretty intense ones here in Hangouts. Actually, I just found a couple more images that might be good examples of, like, this is a pre-planned concept. Let me show you this one. This one here is something I pre-planned with the model. We only took, like, again, 5 or 6 different pictures, and So we're taking time to lay out the tarot cards. The candle is not really lit. It's just sitting there, but I have a speed light pointing straight down on it because I know later I'm going to be adding a flame, but I can't get a flame big enough I want it. Plus, I'm in a commercial building and I really don't want to see how big I can get that flame. But I need to make that light look more obvious when it's done. Now, there's a giant softbox off to her side as well that's gelled to make it look like the light is from the candle, but yet not from another source. Meaning, if you look at it, it's not exactly the same source, but I don't think people pick it apart that fast. You know, they just kind of enjoy it for what it is. Then afterwards, we sat there. She got on one side of the room, I got on the other side of the room, and we basically threw tarot cards into the room and just took a bunch of pictures of them. And when I was happy with the ones I wanted, I masked them into the scene. So it was a very simple scene to assemble. It's probably only 3 photos in the end. But the candle, the birds, the fog that appears around the floor, and you really can't see. I can't make this thing fit very well. I should try a different. Let me try this different method here. Let's do this. You see, there's some glyphs across the floor to just add a little bit more of a foreground element to it. Just kind of playing with different concepts there. But so this was pre-planned. I mean, we knew exactly what we wanted. We took the pictures that we needed to do, and then we got out of there. So it was in and out in, say, 25 minutes, half an hour. The longest part was getting the light set up and metering the lights, and then getting a pose, a facial expression. Again, the big blower fan, I'm using that again to get some movement in the hair. Just enough to make it interesting, but not hopefully distracting.
Nice. So, I mean, there's obviously a lot of details, that you have to pay attention to make sure you get a certain feeling across, like you said, like with the hair and the movement with the cards and everything like that. We have another question we can probably take. So Desiree's asking, what's your favorite kind of lens to use for these kind of studio shots?
I have 2 favorites. I have a Nikon 70-200 2.8, which I love. Is my favorite lens, and then I have a Nikon 105mm 2.8, which is my second favorite lens. I prefer a longer focal length for perspective compression because I'm shooting against a sweep, a piece of paper basically, and a lot of people get these little tiny, 4-foot wide background, and like, how can I shoot somebody against this thing? It's not covering, it's not wide enough, it's not tall enough. And the secret to that is you're not far enough back. You need to back way up and use a really long lens. 200mm lens will compress the perspective, and you'll find that background is plenty wide for everything you need, especially if you pull your model forward a bit. So I almost always shoot on, as I said, a gray sweep, and those longer lenses are needed for me. The 105mm I use mostly for portraiture or detail work because it's so sharp, and it's a great length for a portrait. But the 200mm is more for the full body, 3/4 length type of thing.
So if you're talking about backing up far enough to use a 200mm, I mean, how far physically, like in feet, are you backing up from your subject?
15 to 20,
okay,
at least. I mean, I've gone back at least, farther, depending on what I need. The other thing to remember is that you don't have to shoot a whole lot of headroom or sides. Some of my first shoots I did on paper, I would do some creative cropping, a rule of thirds, and then later on I realized that all that white space off to the side that I made in my part of my composition is useless because it's just white. And all those megapixels went to waste, where I could have zoomed in much closer on the model. Zoom with my feet, by the way, not with my lens, because I want to keep my perspective the same. And when you change your focal length of your lens, you're not just changing how much of your frame is being filled. You're changing the perspective, so noses look longer, things change. Also, your front and back focus changes. The depth of field gets modified as you move closer or farther away from your subject. So you have a lot more control, and when you zoom, you get kind of lazy and you don't learn those things. So I tend to rack out my 200mm lens at 200 and walk in and out depending on what I need. But learning to not leave so much headroom or sides around the model was awesome, because so much more megapixels being used for the actual subject than for some creative cropping that no one's ever going to see. You can always add sides, you can always recrop it, add additional paper, as it were, around the model.
Nice. Well, we're coming towards the end of our show here. first off, I wanted to, Scott, if you want to go ahead and let us see you again, and close that window and have your camera. There we go. Now we can actually see you. Thank you very much for taking the time to set up all these images and talk us through it and everything. We really do appreciate you being on the show and showing us some of your work. So if you could please just repeat, where people can find more of your work and details about your book and that kind of stuff.
Sure. Well, my lightshootedit.com has some good tips and techniques. I'm actually closing it down for another reason too. Is I love feedback from people, and I wasn't getting any. I think people were just using the site, getting ideas from it, and then just kind of walking away. I wanted to know more about what they wanted to see, what they liked, what they didn't like, and I just wasn't getting that. I think that in the end, the video of the Hangouts here and the book will probably make me a lot happier as a person who what I needed for myself out of that medium. You can find me on Twitter at se.detweiler.com. It's SEDETWEILER, and then my website is the same thing. It's se.detweiler.com. And you see my more recent work is posted up there. I sell prints of my stuff up on there. A lot of the models often buy the prints, but I have third-party groups that buy them too. Then I sell the rights to some images that people want for advertising or other things. And I love new work, concepts and so on. If somebody wants to do something, collaborate on something, I'd love to do it. I'm always open for new ideas. And hopefully the book will be out in the next month, under the next month, hopefully, and available all over the place. And I hope to do 3 volumes. If this one sells well, I'll probably do 2 more after that, and then do a final printed volume of all 3 combined together to kind of give everybody everything. And it's all over the board. It's from the mistakes I've made and the stupid things I've done to how I did to correct them, and basically trying to produce what I had in my mind.
Well, again, thank you very much, and also thank you to all the people watching. We always appreciate your participation and your questions as well as ideas that you guys might want to have on the show for next time. So today we didn't have Eric Doggett in today, so Eric, if you're watching, we missed you, man. I know the audience did, especially with all the technical difficulties that were cropping up. But you're watching PhotogTV. We air every Thursday at noon with special guests, Photoshop tutorials, and everything else in between. So again, Scott, thank you for coming, and everybody else, thanks for watching. Have a great day.
So thank you.